The members of the delegation have taken holidays and are travelling at their own expense under the umbrella of the American People-to-People Citizens Ambassador program. Some of the contingent also took a similar trip to China 2 years ago. By necessity, they explained the United States Postal Service is much larger than ours, with a budget of $35 billion annually. Other differences from Australia Post include 6 days a week operation and the necessity to deliver by mule to Navajo Indians in the Grand Canyon and by dog sled in Alaska, for instance. But a difference Australians could appreciate is that it's illegal to put anything but US mail in a US mail box, so their official standard letterboxes would never be junked like this. And while we think of Americans as being customer service specialists, the leader of the delegation, Hugh Bates, had nothing but praise for Australia Post's efforts at improving customer relations.
You're ahead of us on a few things here. On the customer courtesy is extremely well, and your people are dressed well, and I like your distribution system. From what I have seen of Australian Post, I think the people should be proud.
The Newcastle Microcomputing Exhibition is now in its 6th year and has become recognised as the main showcase for the Hunter region in computer hardware, software and support facilities. Convener John Dugas says the exhibition is aimed at showing how computers can be used in all facets of business, no matter how large or small.
You've got computer hardware and computer software on show. The sorts of things that would be able to make a businessman, say, work more effectively, more efficiently, more productively. And also, of course, we cater for the family as well, and the person who's got an interest in microcomputing.
More than 20,000 people are expected to view computers and new programs in action and attend a series of lectures on computer capabilities. Mr. Dugas says although the exhibition is being staged at the Hunter Institute, it does not mean it is exclusively for students.
No, certainly not. In fact, what we're trying to do is to attract the wide general public. There's no charge to come, there's no charge to park.
It's the price that has launched a war. When 2-litre containers of milk hit the shelves at many of the city's major supermarkets at $1.63 this morning, it meant Newcastle was finally in the grip of the interstate battle over milk prices. It all began when Victorian producers brought their milk north of the border and sold it through some supermarket chains for a far cheaper price than the home state. In retaliation, the New South Wales government announced the deregulation of milk prices to make this state's milk competitive. So 2-litre milk containers that once sold between $1.80 and $1.85 suddenly had the potential to sell for more than 20 cents cheaper, an opportunity the supermarkets seized upon.
We've reduced the price by 17 cents at this stage, 3 cents more than the cost reduction. We believe we're the cheapest. If somebody comes down to meet us, the prices could go lower.
As State General Manager of the Shoeys chain, Chris Gribble has nothing but support for the cost reductions. He says New South Wales milk has been too dear for too long, and it was time it was made cut costs and become competitive for the sake of everyone.
Long term, they're going to become competitive, and which will keep our imported milk from Victoria or even New Zealand. Long term, I think it'll be very good for the industry. It certainly is very good for our customers.
But for the milk vendors, the picture is not so rosy. The cost reduction has only been handed down to the bulk buyers, those selling more than 3,000 litres a week, and it means the vendors have virtually been left out in the cold. Katara South Milko John Edwards said the price cuts have created a crisis situation, not only for the vendors but also many of their customers.
We do 80% of the market now, and we've got people who put milk into their fridge for them. That actually, we've got one lady with one leg. And how's she going to get to the supermarket? So I think that people like that, pensioners, they'll lose out of it, and supermarkets will just make more money.
Tomorrow morning, the vendors will meet to discuss their situation. It's possible, despite the financial problems it might create, they will too introduce cut-price milk as an alternative to seeing their livelihood go down the drain.
Vastly improved 3-year-old flight schedule should be rewarded for his consistency by taking out the Video Easy welter at Rose Hill. Flight schedule surprised with a great second to Card Shark and the All-Age Stakes on April 1 and drops sharply in the weights tomorrow. Mighty Willem and Bravery, after good first-up performances on April the 1st, will provide most opposition to flight schedule. So in the first leg, Gary suggests you back flight schedule, and in the second leg, Paris Pride. Racing in Melbourne is at Caulfield, and the Daily Double most appealing to our little tipster is Gladful in the first leg and Century Judge in the second, and Gary's trifecta reads Gladful to beat Acid Print and Purple Habit. It's Greyhound Racing at Beaumont Park, and Nation's Hour and Juvenile Mate should win the legs of the Daily Double, and the numbers you need for your trifecta are 2, 5 and 1, Comfy Built, Tangan Prince and Crystal Supreme. At Cessnock Trots tomorrow night, try Casey Mountain and Harlane Adios for the double, and Casey Mountain, Truant Flight and Blue Chip Bid for the trifecta. Hope you back a winner or three.
It is now known that Belmont, Singleton and Newcastle fax offices are to be amalgamated by the end of this month, and King Edward Children's Home in Derby Street has already been closed. More cutbacks by the department, which welfare leaders believe will amount to a further 6%, was the subject of a meeting of groups including the Samaritans, Centre Care, Neighbourhood Services and Family Support, called by the Hunter Region Community Council.
That 6% will either have to mean a dramatic reduction of services from family and community service officers, or alternatively a fairly hefty cut into community-based services that the department itself funds.
And they fear all the cuts in the Hunter will be made at the same time.
It was reported to the meeting today that the Regional Director of Family and Community Services is proposing to implement all 9% of the total cuts in the 1 year on the basis that one hard, sharp shock is much easier to cope with than continual cutting. We've yet to confirm that with him, and we'll be interested to see what his response is on that report.
The 24 representatives at the meeting decided to take positive action.
We decided to set up a small coordinating committee which will organise a public meeting to be held early in May, where we will invite Robin Henderson, the convener of the Campaign for Social Justice, and members of the PSA and indeed members of the department to talk to us about the cuts and the effects that they're having in the community.
What is really worrying Hunter welfare workers is they just don't know where the cuts will be made. What they do know is the most disadvantaged members of Hunter society will be the ones to suffer the most, from cuts to a service that workers believe has already been pruned right back to the bone. Rebecca Skinner reporting for NBN News.
Organisers told more than 100 Hunter milk vendors that this was a crisis meeting. The vendors believe that if they don't protect themselves against supermarket discounters, they'll be caught up in a price war which would see many facing a threat to their livelihoods. State Agriculture Minister Ian Armstrong approved milk price cuts in large Sydney supermarkets by 7 cents a litre to compete against Victorian imports. Hunter vendors believe this will leave smaller retailers severely disadvantaged.
The problem that we're facing is that with no enforcement on price, then no one can determine at what level the discounting will go down to. In other words, it's sheer madness. As one supermarket discounts to a price, another supermarket will discount lower. And at any of those stages, then vendors and small shopkeepers simply can't compete.
After more than 4 hours of talks, the vendors have agreed to send a delegation to the Agriculture Minister demanding that he set a minimum price which will avoid a discounting panic and still allow supermarkets to make profits. The demand has the full backing of the Newcastle Traders Association, which represents more than 400 local stores. The delegation is expected to meet Mr Armstrong late on Tuesday afternoon. A vascular surgeon from the US joined a local specialist in a demonstration of the latest in laser technology. The 73-year-old woman patient was suffering from hardening of the arteries, which made walking even short distances extremely uncomfortable. In a more conventional operation, the problem would be corrected using extensive surgery during a 3-hour bypass operation. On this occasion, an optical fibre is passed down the diseased artery and a laser beam cuts a path for the blood supply. The procedure was televised to delegates of the 4th Annual Convention of the Australian Society of Ultrasound in Medicine, which is being hosted by Newcastle. The operation was completed within half an hour. Normally, the patient would require a 7 to 10 day stay in hospital. With this technique, surgeons are confident she'll be home within 2 days.
The Tomarin Peninsula at Port Stephens is prized for its beaches, surf and fishing, but plans are to link up current sewage plants round the harbour with homes on septic tanks. The untreated sewage would then join other effluent, like chemicals, fats and metals, and discharge into the ocean off Boulder Bay. Today's public meeting was the first on the subject, which has been worrying local groups since the Hunter Water Board announcement 2 years ago. The Fingal Bay Progress Association invited speakers from Council, Community Forum and member for Port Stephens, Bob Martin.
The LEP 2000 shows that by the first decade next century, which is less than 20 years away, there'll be 40 to 50,000 people living here. We can't pollute our beautiful area.
He believes the local fishing industry is also at risk. The meeting vowed to fight for a change in the sewage legislation and higher levels of treatment for ocean and other outfalls. Already Port Stephens Council has requested that no further decision is made on Boulder Bay until a full report is received on alternative methods of effluent disposal. The beautiful Fingal Bay beach is colloquially known as the Palm Beach of Newcastle, but if the Boulder Bay outfall goes ahead, residents fear it could become another Bondi, and according to the 300 worried people at today's public meeting, that's something they just won't accept.
We're going to lobby the Minister. We use people like yourself as the media to get the message across, and we've got to keep the pressure onto the government. It's very important.
Do you believe that you can do anything about it?
Well, it's up to all of us to work together, and the more pressure we put there, the better we are.
The historic buildings of Tocal reflect over 160 years of Australian rural heritage, and the discovery of silos, coupled with perfect weather, attracted hundreds of visitors. The Georgian homestead was built in 1841 and in 1844 was leased to Charles Reynolds, who made the Tocal name famous in the agricultural world. The estate was later bought by the Alexander family in 1926, and after the death of the last remaining sisters 4 years ago, is being restored by the C.B. Alexander Foundation. This bottle-shaped brick silo is one of 3 discovered here and proved a fascination to the visitors, but only our cameraman was able to venture down the 15-foot deep hole. Other silos found in Australia have been government-built and most have been damaged.
The old store building in Newcastle West went up for auction today, only to be passed in at $8 million. The owners Vintex were hoping for $9 million. Negotiations are continuing, however, with the 2 potential Sydney buyers. According to agent George Karamanian of The Professionals, it looks like the building will be refurbished and 2 major retailers established to share the complex with the Pink Elephant markets. According to the agent, 40 potential buyers showed interest in the building, with bidding beginning at $6 million.
The Congress, to be held over 3 days, has attracted international attention because the issue is still topical after the suspension of a number of athletes during the Seoul Olympics. Hunter Academy of Sport Executive Director Ken Clifford says the world's best medical experts will be attending the conference, and sports champions will also lend their weight to discourage people from using prohibited drugs in their training.
We've invited some expertise in the medical field, Darren, to come along, as well as some world-class athletes. We've invited 3 well-known overseas athletes, Sebastian Coe, Ed Moses and Carl Lewis. None of them have actually said definitely yes yet, but they are contemplating coming, and we do have some very well-known Australian people who are coming. Mark Richards has indicated that he'll be present, as has Craig Johnson. We've received some verbal indications from people like Wayne Pearce and Dawn Fraser.
Mr Clifford says all discussions throughout the conference will be held in layman's terms.
We don't want to scare people away by them thinking that it's an intellectual, academic couple of days. We're aiming the level of discussion at the ordinary person involved in sport. The sports coach or the sports administrator will certainly be able to follow what's going on and be able to gain a lot from the Congress.
The state government is fully backing the conference and will finance the publishing of a book detailing the results and conclusions from the conference. That book will then play a major role in determining the government's policy on drug usage in sport. Falcons coach Ken Cole, his players and all the Broadmeadows Stadium facilities are contracted to Myla Proprietary Limited, a company controlled by entrepreneur Basil Sellers. Yesterday's court decision merely confirmed the Newcastle Basketball Club only